Welcome to the You Love to See It podcast, coverage of your Seattle Mariners. Hello, and welcome once again to the You Love to See It podcast, coverage of your Seattle Mariners. I'm your host, Jake. You can find me on Twitter at Mariners Jerseys, and you can find all episodes of this podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, and Amazon Music. And once again, we don't care about Samsung Audio. That's become the running joke now. If you're watching on YouTube, a like and subscribe would be appreciated. If you're listening on streaming platforms, leave a 5-star review, follow the show. Helps out the show a lot. I would appreciate it. Today's episode, we have another guest. We are joined by Patrick, who is 1/4 of MarinerMuse. MarinerMuse, if you don't know, which would be surprising, is from what I can tell, the largest fan-led Twitter account, Mariners Twitter account, currently sitting at 16.4K followers. And Patrick is specifically more of the social media person for him at this point. So yeah, if you haven't seen MarinerMuse tweets on your timeline, one, shocking, two, go follow them. But yeah, if you did, it most likely came from
You
Patrick.
probably have us meeting.
Yeah, maybe. Well, Patrick, welcome to the show. I appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having me, Jake. I appreciate it. Happy to do these.
Yeah, no, I guess I got to start with like I whenever I look for either Twitter accounts or on YouTube, the most I usually see people at is like 10K. And like I said, you guys are at 16. Um, how did you get that big? Is kind of my first thing. And like, I guess, was it a shock that your Twitter account has gotten to be as I guess massive as it has been?
Second question first is yes. But in terms of how it got big, like, me and Travis, who is kind of the second primary person on the account, started a newsletter when we got out of college in like 2015 or 16, and probably the 2016 season, and created the Twitter account the next year in 2017 when we were still doing the newsletter. We've had a couple people kind of come in and contribute. We were kind of emailing it out to like 150 of our closest friends, basically at that point. And Charlie and Anthony, who are both Mariners guys that I went to high school with, Travis went to high school with, Charlie and Anthony and I all have at one point done stuff for Soto Mojo back in the day.
Okay.
I was editor for Soto Mojo in the summer of 2012, I think 2012, and Anthony was probably contributing the most when I was running it, and then Charlie ran it in summer 2013. So we've all done Mariners blogosphere stuff in the past, and so we all kind of made the Twitter account and we're kind of randomly doing musings, basically, which is where the name kind of comes from. And I'd say, it had some good tweets, and I don't know, we had like 500 followers in like fall of 2019. And I would say probably when the Mariners got good in 2021 was when we kind of first started to have traction. But I think why we have 16,000 followers, like you said, is um, kind of the rise of those Muse accounts. You see all like the pixelated stat Muse inspired pictures of
Yeah.
various things, and people like to it's kind of like a default. People just follow that if you follow the team
Yeah.
to a certain extent. And so we kind of, I think, in the midst of that becoming more of a thing in the last couple of years and the Mariners becoming really good, we kind of caught some of the waves. Now, I mean, I think we do interesting, funny stuff, and kind of that's why I still do it to a certain extent.
Mhm.
But the reason why the following got that big was definitely the confluence of people kind of assuming that we were a stat Muse account to a certain extent, because we've seen like 3 or 4 different attempts at like a Mariners stat Muse account getting created, but we kind of have the username, so to speak. We don't have
Yeah.
Mariners Muse. We don't have the S, but I do think a lot of we kind of were like losing control of it in the middle of 2022, and it was like, why is this like doing what it is? And
Yeah.
we had a good voice for sure for the time, and 2022 was like a crazy time in terms of
Of
just
course.
like Mariners optimism exploding. But I do think the Muse element, we just got a lot of traffic from like people that were just sort of like trying to follow that, and that's kind of where it is. And I think part of why it still is kind of as big as it is, even though 2023 was a little tougher, was
Yeah.
because just I try to really kind of keep track of everything from a fan perspective going on with the Mariners, and I think that's probably why they're because we were not nearly as good at it in like 2021. And I just think now I'm like, okay, I'm plugged in enough and online enough that I kind of understand everything that's going on, and I made a lot more mistakes in like 2022 and early 2023 than I do now in terms of
Mhm.
like reading the room and trying to figure stuff out. So, but that's kind of how it got to where it got.
Yeah, no, well, when I first found your guys' account was after the Mariners got knocked out of the playoffs in 2022, and you guys, I think, pivoted to being like Phillies Muse or something like that. You
Mm.
adopted the team. I was like, oh, that's a cool idea. Like, I've never seen that. I mean, granted, I was new to baseball Twitter first, and then of course Mariners Twitter. I wasn't even really a part of that at that point, but I was like, oh, that's cool. It's a nice idea, and I was got a lot of like positivity from that. I was like, oh, that's a really positive, nice account to follow and whatnot. Which I'm not saying it's not. Of course, 2023 and the off season in general has been not good for I feel like any of us in that department. Which we will definitely get to. I'm sure I would love to know your thoughts about how it's been going. But the MarinerMuse account does say it's like for Seattle natives. So there's four people that like contribute to the account and kind of do like what are the roles
Yeah.
looking like now, I guess.
So it kind of varies. Travis and I have always kind of been the two that have been most consistent with it. For me, right now, really, I think there's a lot of um, the. I would say growing the Twitter account was more something that I was more interested in than anything else. Just like I kind of really enjoy having the voice, so I end up doing most of it in the off season. While it's going on, though, we like to all kind of make it as fun of an activity as possible for everyone to get involved. So we definitely all tweet from it. We all kind of rotate when we do our Twitter Spaces, which we'll have to figure out exactly what we're going to do with that this year. But we'll rotate that, and then we like really use it as a way if anyone wants to work on sort of personal projects through it, raise money for charity, et cetera, et cetera. We'll sort of hot potato it around. Travis has a project he's working on about a podcast about the ballparks, every ballpark in the country, which is something he really likes to. Every MLB ballpark is something he really is passionate about, and he and a buddy are going to work on something in the next couple of weeks leading up to the season. And so that's gonna be kind of a part of the account, and so we kind of all just it's definitely everyone kind of handles what they want to handle kind of thing, and but for me mostly it's like I'm the only one that lives here as well, so that kind of I'm more plugged into the local stuff and some of the minutia with local media and local storylines and that kind of
Yeah.
thing. So it tends to be a lot more of my voice, but everybody chimes in how they wanted to, and it kind of it's great because it's just like three guys I went to high school with a long time ago. All have been doing various Mariners things with them over the years, and we've stuck to it. So it's cool to kind of have a bit of a voice
Yeah.
in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, and I when you were talking about kind of how you started the account, I thought it was interesting that you mentioned writing for Soto Mojo because that's like obviously I've interviewed Ty, he did the same thing.
Yep.
Colton from Mariner Mojo said he did the same thing. So I think it's interesting how there's kind of like that connection where it seems like a lot of the people who are definitely have one of the more of the bigger voices in the Mariner space right now started with Soto Mojo, and it kind of led to all their individual stuff. I thought that was interesting. So, do you prefer writing mainly to, I guess, any other medium of content?
It's changed a lot. I started listening to podcasts in like 2017. I used to be in journalism when I got out of college. So when I would do long drives, I would listen to podcasts, and I became way more interested in podcasts than writing as I sort of transitioned out of that, as well as just kind of like stuff has gone on. And I think there's something, I've always just been a huge Twitter person ever since I got it when I started college. And so um, really like the media focus, the breaking news element of stuff. And I just think after a while of trying to figure out um, how to sort of reach people with Mariner stuff, the Twitter account is kind of where what it ended up being. So,
Yeah,
it,
it's that
my
kind of
favorite
Goliath.
type of Mariners media is writing tweets, which is really uh, a very niche thing that more people, like you said, follow us than most of the fan related things. So
Yeah,
it's a lot of people have a lot of other things that they do in the Mariners media space, and mine is tweet.
yeah. Well, I mean, clearly you're really good at it. I mean, it's not easy to gain that following at all.
Yeah, but
So
we've tried to make the Mariner Muse into a lot of other things, and I think one of the things that, like I said, we just kind of do what we do to have fun. And I've made accounts on freaking like Instagram and all of the Twitter clones like Threads and Blue Sky and all these things,
yeah,
and just like it the desire to like make those into a thing, TikTok, YouTube, we have it all. And the desire to like put time into that is not it's I'm not like a content creator strictly. Like I wouldn't describe myself as that, because really like the thing that I do is tweet. And
yeah.
uh, we have accounts for it, but I just have never like felt as motivated to do other stuff besides that.
Yeah, not, and that makes sense. I tried to do writing very briefly on like Substack, and I was,
Yeah.
it was fun, but at the same time, I was just like, I've always had that more of that passion for the videos and the video editing and
Mhm.
whatnot. So I was like, I'll just pivot that way. I already like it a lot more in general. I was kind of forcing myself to write, which is like I don't really like the idea of having to force myself.
For sure.
And I don't have to force myself to like enjoy doing podcasting or YouTube videos or whatever. So just very opposite ends of the spectrum, but they both definitely have their place clearly. And at the end of the day, I think it's good for fans to have basically Mariners news and what's going on in really any way they want it to consume it. There's really no specific way that's more valuable than the other. Um, so I guess to kind of dial back a little bit too, like where did the origin of just your Mariners fandom come from? Like what started it all and what sparked it all?
Yeah, so I mean, my dad has always got me into baseball from when I was like really young. I didn't move here until I was 10, but so that would have been 2002. So I was a true drought Mariners fan. I
Yeah,
had not seen the Mariners make the playoffs as living in Seattle since until last year. So, the other guys all were born here. So they were born like right before '95,
yeah,
uh, and they grew up when but they were like till they were like 8, and the Mariners were really good. And I moved here, and I
not good after that.
I
Yeah,
don't have that in my like distant childhood. I don't think I would connect with it a ton, maybe either way, but maybe there'd be a little bit more positivity in my memories of the team. But yeah, so just remember that from an early age, just like really loving to go to the games. And I think probably most got into it when um, kind of started doing sports writing when I was in high school and getting into sort of the blog space.
hmm
When I did Soto Mojo, I was only like 19 when I did Soto Mojo, so that'd have been a really long time ago. And it was kind of probably intensified the most from that. But Travis has been a really good friend of mine for a really long time, and when we were in college out of state, we were so kind of like the weird dudes who would follow the Mariners
yeah,
when and watch them super late at night, and kind of stay plugged in with that. So yeah, just always they've always kind of been with me, and then moving back to Seattle in 2019, I just started going to a ton of games, and 2022, I it was the first time I went to. It was like really the first time I went to as many Mariners games as I did, and just kind of they've always kind of been a constant for me. And yeah, I wish I had happier Mariners memories, but if you're a Mariners fan, you don't really have happier Mariners. Don't
Yeah.
really have happy memories. 2022, I wouldn't trade for the world though. 2022 was great.
Yeah. What would you say is like the most games you went to in like a single season?
2022, I know the number. I think I went to 21 in 2022, which
Nice.
was it's a quarter of the home games. And that was there wasn't anything quite like that. But yeah, I always end up like my number ends up being kind of small, and then in September I'll end up going to a ton. Like this past year,
Yeah.
I was really verging on like nihilism amount of games. Like I was still single digits heading into September, but then obviously they got back in the race, and
Yeah. August kind
I
of
ended up
convinced you.
going. Yeah, well, I went to games. Let me just say that I wasn't. There
Yeah.
wasn't a lot of positive, touchy feely moments from this past year of
Yeah, that's true.
Mariners baseball, but I would say that I ended up going to double digit games this year, but definitely down. But yeah, 21. I don't think I'll ever beat 21 again. That was quite a year.
So what would you and I asked like I think Colton this from Mariner Mojo, just anyone who goes to games more than a few times a year like me, what would you say is like your perfect Mariners day or Mariners game day, I guess? Like what's your plan before, during?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I've like lived a couple of different places, and so it's a little like I used to, and they're all kind of going out of business now, but I used to like ride an electric scooter down to the park from either where I'm at now, or when I lived kind of south side. That was always great, and going down on an evening. But I don't. I really like Edgar's Cantina,
Okay.
from like a game day perspective. I think that's like maybe my favorite place in the park. It can kind of be dodgy actually getting a decent spot in there though.
Yeah.
Really got into Edgar's in when I came back in 2019, and there weren't like a lot of people going to the games. That was like
Perfect. Yeah.
prime spot, but it's not. It's a little harder these days. I'm trying to think where my favorite place to sit is these days.
Do you prefer day games or night games?
I would say night games just because day games can be like really the sun can be like really annoying in
True.
day games, especially if it's in like the middle of the summer.
Yeah.
Um, my girlfriend and I end up going left field bleachers more than anything though, which is something
Okay.
that I never really did growing up, but is kind of like a good medium. And a lot of the people that um, are online Mariners people end up sitting in various places in the left field bleachers. I think that's
Yeah.
kind of become my favorite spot in the park. And I used to be a huge Mariners dog guy, but I'm definitely out on that now.
Okay. So yeah, I
I
guess what's the new
kind of
food
reformed
place?
my
Is there a new
ways.
one that's like taking your heart?
I really like marination in the park. And
Okay.
I really like that restaurant in general. I really think that's a good like pay like $15 and like get pretty decent standardized Hawaiian food. I
Yeah.
like that.
I would say for just a warning, last time I went to the game, I did that one of those like Amazon self things where like just knows what you take out, however it does that.
Yeah,
The food is
those are
trash.
interesting.
Don't do that. It was so
Those,
bad.
those are really yeah. I'm a little wary of those. I think they're much better in Climate Pledge if you've gone to
I
Climate Pledge
haven't. I
recently.
want to, but those Kraken games are so expensive. It's
Oh
ridiculous.
my gosh, man! Yeah, no kidding. But I've been to a few, and they're pretty solid. And I go for like um, Seattle U games occasionally, so it's
Nice.
a good spot for sure.
Yeah, I was gonna say about the left field bleachers. I haven't sat there, but I sat in the outfield for the first time last year, and it honestly it's kind of underrated being out in the outfield because It's nice because they're really. I mean, granted, all the seats are elevated, so I can't say like, oh, it's a cool perspective. But especially if they're hitting like home runs and whatnot, uh, that view is a lot cooler to watch a home run because it's like coming close to you. It looks like it's going to hit you a lot of the time. But yeah, I think a lot of people sleep on those outfield bleachers, and I don't think those are the ones that are $10 now. I think it's center field if I remember right, but it
Yeah, center fielder is definitely the cheaper ones.
yeah, but left field is cool because I even see like the flags for certain sections, and there's the dude with the broccoli who's like always there. Who I don't know
Yes,
much
dude,
about
that
him,
guy is
but
great. I don't know much about him either, but he's like a lovely
he seems like a
lovely
very
individual.
positive dude, which is
Big fan
nice.
of broccoli.
Yeah,
Let me see if I can find this. I was gonna tell a story. Let me see.
yeah.
Behind, should be on my desk. I have a baseball that Julio randomly chucked into the left field bleachers while I was sitting in there. We were kind of
Oh,
like towards the
nice.
center field side, and he like chucked it, and my girlfriend's friend like trapped it on her, like in between like her cup and her drink cup and her side, and just like trapped it. And like didn't even see it coming,
Yeah,
and it just like rocketed up there. So I have that somewhere
somewhere.
here. I don't. Oh,
Yeah,
there it is.
that's my dream to catch a ball in a beer cup and then chug it. Nice.
That's it.
Yeah,
Um,
my game used
so-
ball isn't even something I caught. I like bought it from that game used section. I bought those like little black bags that are like a mystery. It's a game used ball or it's
oh
an
yeah,
autographed ball, and I was like, that's fun. I'll do it. So mine's like a foul ball from Brandon Belt off Bryce Miller. It's like we used two pitches. I'm like, it's cool though. It has like the mark of the foul ball.
this is my
Nice.
favorite Mariners thing on my desk.
Mark from
Is
Maple
this?
Valley hates us right now for showing this.
Yeah, no, I don't know. Like you got to strike a balance, right? Because
Yeah,
I totally like Mark from Maple Valley is right. Like
yeah,
if you are just like, oh, I hate the team, but then you like spend money on everything.
yeah.
I found like strike a balance. One thing that I really like, and I'll shameless plug, is Simply Seattle is just an
Agreed.
awesome.
Yeah,
They do a great job of like actually like making Mariners merch. That is
yeah.
great. This is one of
Yeah,
theirs,
I hit them up and
and
they're really nice. There was a
they're good
sweatshirt I
folk.
wanted. They didn't have my size, and they were like, I'm still waiting for a DM back, but they were like, maybe I'll see if we can source that for you. And I was like, that's super sick. So hopefully they do that.
They've had a
If
great
not,
year too. I mean,
oh yeah,
their UW stuff has like been huge, and that's been like
yeah,
their big run. So, they're great. I love how much they support the local sports scene. So
yeah,
if people are like trying to channel their frustration but still have show their support for their Mariners fandom, I really
yeah.
Simply Seattle. I couldn't.
If you don't want your money going to John Stanton's pocket through
I
Fanatics,
don't see. I'm very careful because I don't want to say that people shouldn't spend money on the Mariners because I don't think
yeah,
that's.
I don't think that's
And we
totally
can kind
true
of,
or totally
if you want to
the right
segue
option.
into sort of a discussion of sort of what's been going on with the
Yeah,
team,
and I think that's a good time.
that's like kind of where I'm at. It's like I'm not at the point where like I'll be as frustrated as I am, and you probably see that.
Mhm.
Um, but I don't want to. I'm not at a point where I feel like the we have to kind of get the pitchforks out and just like ignore the team because I really think the biggest thing is there's just so much to support on the player side of things, and that's like
Yep,
really my thing is like Julio Rodriguez is the coolest player that the Mariners have had since I was like. I
probably
mean, I
since
love Felix
Ichiro.
Hernandez. Ichiro is probably the biggest thing, and a lot of my memory of Ichiro is the later stuff where the team wasn't any good, and he was incredible and special, but he was just never. Julio is kind of the next level of like only Griffey has really reached the level that he could potentially reach
Yep,
as a Mariner, and that's awesome. And then I think J.P. Crawford and Cal Raleigh are just like two of them are just so crucial and important,
yep,
and they very much understand where the fans are coming from. I think that's been very clearly um, communicated by them in the last few months. And so I think that that and all the great pitching is worth supporting. So as much as I am immensely frustrated and am extremely pro a different group of Mariners owners owning the Mariners, I am not at the point yet where you know the pitchforks are out, because I do think it is important to realize that some perspective about where we're at with the Mariners is good. Now, I don't think
Yep.
they've necessarily succeeded um, in a lot of ways, other than in spite of themselves, especially the financial restrictions that they put on the team. But there's a lot of good things about the Mariners, and I do think that's important to highlight sometimes.
Yeah, I think that you bring up a good point that, and I was seeing it with the tweet the other day that the Mariners put out with Mitch Garver and his quote about, this team is good,
That was
and
interesting.
those comments were insane. I saw someone like likening it to like a hostage statement, like there's a gun to his head to say the team is going to be good. And I mean, for me, a guy coming in to this team, like one, I hope he doesn't read comments because that would be rough. Uh, but coming into this team and seeing like that reaction to your optimism about the team that you just signed up to move your life to go play for, uh, doesn't look great in my opinion. And two, I do think there's been this just general like unreasonableness in the amount of like how bad this team is. Like people saying it's going to be under 500, you're insane. Like that's just so unrealistic and so ridiculous to me. And I'm not saying you can't be pessimistic about the team and think that there's more to be done because we all think that. It's just a matter of this team isn't a sub 500 team. This team is still going to win north of 80 games. It's just a matter of like how much north of 80 games are they going to win. We don't know. And like you said, they have a good pitching core. They have still one of the best starting rotations in baseball. I'd argue top five, maybe even top three. And I liked the comments recently that they came out with. I think it was Hollander said that they're not looking at inning limits for like Wu and Miller, so they must have some sort of information that like those dudes are good to go. They're ready to be full on starters for us. So of course, there's the pitching side. There's the offensive side with Julio, JP, Cal. I'm a little bit high on Urias. I think he'll be decent for us. I think Rojas is going to be a good player for us too. Garver, especially. I mean, he's pretty much proven when he plays, he is an absolute monster. So it's just a matter of keeping him healthy. And their plan, per Justin Hollander the other day, is he's going to be the everyday DH. And if there's any way to keep him healthy, that's going to be it. So it's that it's just hard for me to see so much of the I get just the negativity and the people being like, "Oh, still not enough. I'm still not spending a single dime on you or whatever." I'm just like, one, you're gonna watch the games, like you are, like you may not spend a dime, but you're gonna watch every game, and then are you going to feel the same if they make the playoffs? I mean, I just
I
don't know.
I think that's an interesting question. I thought about that today because we got a comment about that, and it's like if they make the playoffs, so they can have whatever payroll I want. And I mean, I don't know if I would really it, like if they win the World Series. Like I'm not gonna care like if they had an $120 million payroll because they won the World Series.
Yeah.
But I just like don't think that that's like a realistic scenario. Now, like
Mhm.
obviously anything can happen, and that's why like the Dodgers spending untold millions and kind of working around the system by deferring it isn't really is ultimately like something you can complain about, but ultimately isn't something that you can't guarantee that that will translate into something into a
No.
World Series. They had a gigantic payroll last year, and Lowell Diamondbacks and they were out.
Yeah.
And so it's just like, like the meme is just like everyone's all that to try to beat the Diamondbacks. It's like, um, yeah, it's the beauty of the sport is even if you have an $120 million payroll and you're going up against teams with $200 million payrolls, you can still beat them. And the
Yep.
Mariners have done a great job of having young players that can go up against those teams. And I think this year will probably be the best example of that yet because four-fifths of the rotation will be guys that are on low-ish contracts. Obviously, Logan got up to 4 million today. Shout out to him.
Yep. Happy for him.
But yeah, absolutely. I hope he gets an extension or
I hope so.
paid more down the road. I kind of don't think he'll get an extension, but
Yeah.
I kind of think they're going to save that money for Kirby. But
Probably.
I I think that the biggest thing that I identify with is just the general brazenness of the way that the team is conducting itself financially, and that even if it is possible to win the way that they are going about it,
Mhm.
that's not why they're doing it.
Yeah.
They aren't like, yes, that it is possible to win with a low payroll, but they have the money to compete with most of these teams, and they choose to operate the team as a money making machine rather than an appreciating asset that you can sell when you're done with it.
Yeah.
So, and they jacked up ticket prices um, across the board, and they don't have the All Star game related to their season ticket package this year. So it's just like a crazy amount of cash in from the ownership.
Yep.
And then to turn around and say that because of the revenue uncertainty with Root Sports, we're going to cut payroll and almost definitely not have a higher payroll, probably at any time this year than they did last year at the end of last year. So
Mhm.
yeah, I just think like that's the biggest thing is even if they have a great roster that's young and in position to win. They should do everything they can to bolster it, and they don't do that. But the main thing is just then what people are mad are is that they're just doing a total bait and switch in everyone's face in terms of jacking up prices and then crying poor, and
Yeah.
that's just not going to fly with people, especially just the way that inflation is right now, and people's budgets are tight, and they don't want to deal with another thing in their life that's just getting squeezed financially, and the Mariners are trying to squeeze every drop out of the fans that they've built over the last couple of years of success.
Yep. Yeah, and I mean, I'm certainly not saying that people don't have a right to be pissed. They do. I think for me, it's we all are. It's just a matter of where are you putting your frustrations and where are you aiming it at? Are you aiming it at the players for saying and, a simple quote about how good they think this roster is? Not the right place. Uh, I don't think even really like Jerry DePoto, right? We started the off season thinking he was kind of the boogeyman of this, and then it comes out pretty
Got his
clearly.
plot armor back really quick.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah. And now, I mean, I think we're all pretty sympathetic to him in general, and can see that he's doing what he can to with his constraints to build the best roster he can. I'm not saying I agree with all of his moves. I certainly don't agree with the Suarez deal and the Kelenic deal. Not even sending them away. It's just I think it's ridiculous what they got back. The Suarez deal, like Savala, to me is nothing. I don't see him being very productive for us at all. I've said it before. I think Carlos Vargas could be a decent reliever for us at some point, and hopefully the pitching lab can help with that. But at the end of the day, that's an everyday third baseman who just played 162 games for you, regardless if you think he should have. he played all 162 games. He was Gold Glove caliber, even though Rawlings is stupid and doesn't know what they're grading. I mean, they're grading for name value at this point. Um, for a guy who is a backup catcher and like a guy who played 5 games, he pitched in 5 games ultimately at the MLB level. And then with the Kalanick deal, I mean, Kowar, I don't have the same faith I have in Vargas as I have for Kowar because he has pitched for a few years and it's like a 9 something ERA. And then,
Fascinated by that.
yeah, and then the other kid's in rookie ball and just had Tommy John or whatever. So it's like, even if he's good, we're not going to know until 2028, something like that. So,
Those trades are like one of the first times I can remember Jerry Dipoto just blatantly dumping value.
yeah.
Um, I think a lot of what he's done in the past has been like marginal value acquisition,
Mm,
and sometimes he reads it wrong. But generally, the Mariners have operated from a position of trades that they make acquire value. And I think what was so shocking and infuriating about all that is they very clearly were just absolutely tossing value
mhm.
out of the boat with those moves. I mean, to just give up on Kelnick was so shocking. And 2 months on, I don't think I'm super upset about not having to watch Kelnick anymore. I think there was a
Yeah.
certain immense frustration and inconsistency with his game that I'm not necessarily broken up about not having to watch anymore. And I think a little bit with Suarez, watching him at the plate in situations where it would have been really great to see him tap into his power, and it's just like he had so much swing and miss this year. And I mean, there was so much about the 2023 Mariners that was just excruciating to watch most of the time, and those two guys were definitely a part of it. Although, God, Suarez's defense was
It was
just
great. Yeah.
unreal this year. It was just so. Honestly, like,
I don't think I
that was
watched
one of
him
the
commit
things.
an error the whole year.
He was
Probably
so
did, but
good over there.
yeah.
He definitely did, but he was so reliable and
Mm,
such a difference maker. And I think they're really gonna miss that because I don't know what Urias and Rojas will bring over there, but
yeah.
uh, it, to a certain extent, like not having those guys around anymore isn't like the most devastating thing as a fan, but just the way they did it, it just
Those
felt like such
returns.
a they've tried to make the organization more valuable from a player value standpoint, and pretty much everything they've done since they've gotten out of the 2014 to 18 core, and it was just really jarring to see them lose value. I think they continue to do a decent job of positioning the roster going forward, but it's just really tough that they have like anywhere from like a 20 to 25 million dollar payroll uh, cut since the end of the season. It just feels it again feels like a team that's a bat away.
Yeah.
It's not as perilously a bad away as it was last time around. Because I think the one thing that's really better is there's just a bigger mass of young guys around the team this year than there has been in the past. I mean,
Yeah.
they just haven't had a dude to play second base um, in the longest time, and so they've had to retread Frazier and Wong, and now this year you've got Rojas, who's going to be the primary, and you've got Dylan Moore to actually play the role that he's supposed to play, and Sam Haggerty is around, and Ryan Bliss is there, and Urias is there. Although he and Rojas will, until they get somebody in, will have to probably split it. But there's just more actual young talent around, and then
Yeah.
Marlowe is around, and they just haven't had a lot of volume of those guys in
Mhm.
recent years, and they've cycled in guys that just aren't of that caliber. So,
Yeah.
and they don't have just a aging. guy like Pollock, who's probably not going to even play in the majors this year.
And Wong was aging too.
Wong, who, yeah, gosh. The counter of that obviously is that those moves went so badly. What do we how do we trust that these moves will also not go badly? Um,
Yeah, I mean, I would wager though that
okay.
they're just different in their makeup, right? Like you said, Pollock was aging, so was Wong. They were both solid the year before, but they were aging. They were all both, I mean, like 35-ish, like they were old. And then so you get Garver, which granted he's 32, so it's not a whole lot different, but he has that track record of if he's healthy, he's just an absolute
Bit of a
monster player.
younger player in terms of mileage too, right? Like
Yeah.
he's been hurt a lot, but he really hasn't played a ton, and
Hmm.
he's never really been what he's been. And I think I mean people have popped that he's not actually good as a DH in his career, but he was good with the Rangers in the last 6 weeks. I saw that stat.
Yeah.
CBS yesterday that he really flipped the switch after he came off of the injured list, and they just stopped catching him down the stretch after they got Austin Hedges in, and he was really good. So yeah, I think that's definitely encouraging. One thing that got pointed out to me that I like about this offseason more is that every guy who they brought in this offseason could be back next year if they
Yeah.
want them to. Which I think is kind of a different mentality because a lot of the guys that they brought in lately, now obviously Suarez and Winker are an exception, even though Winker ended up being a 1 year guy. But the guys they brought in 2022 and 2023 that have been varying degrees of unsuccessful have
Hmm.
been guys that were coming in for a one and done situation. And I do think there's some merit if you like the players, but you're not tossing them into a situation where, okay, 1.5 ish months to get their feet under them, then maybe they hit like a solid stretch, and all of a sudden it's summer and they've got 2 months left as a Mariner, and then it's like so quick how it happens.
Yep.
And Ryan Divish has talked about this, but when Adam Frazier kind of turned it around, and was really good in the playoffs for the Mariners, it was basically after he said like, "Eff it, I am." Whatever. I know I'm not going to get more than a 1 year deal next year anywhere. This contract I was playing for is gone. Let me just do everything I can to sort of like help the team.
Hmm.
Is kind of when he like sparked it. So I think it's definitely tough to continually cycle in these 1 year veteran retreads, which is why I'm encouraged by not only the wave of depth that they have coming from the minors that you'll start to see this year, but also just the kind of amount of guys they have around. And I think
Yeah.
that'll definitely be a more positive force for them this year. I just worry a little bit about whether the top end guys will be as good.
Hmm.
I'm just not sure you can bank on 5 WAR seasons from Crawford and Raleigh again, which
Yeah.
I think is going to be tough. I think you could probably feel like Julio could maybe take an MVP level leap this year, and that could be a huge driving force for them. But I just worry a little bit. They just really need France to be better. Um,
Yeah.
if France is more of like a 3 WAR guy again, and Crawford and Raleigh are kind of in that range as well, and you get one guy to really step up outside of that, then that's kind of like one of the better lineups they've had, and they
Yeah.
can probably make that happen. I just worry a lot about they're counting on a lot from guys that who are just like are kind of question marks. Like Luke Rayleigh's been like a good major league player for like 2.5 months in his career, and Luis Arias hasn't been a good major league player since August 2021 and or 2022.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2022. Um, and even then, it's kind of not the kind of it's kind of Josh Rojas type stuff where it's not like the most. It doesn't pop off the screen watching what he does well.
Yep.
And they're doing a lot with defense this year that is banking on a lot of losing Suarez and then not really having a third baseman is definitely a gamble. And Rayleigh is a weird athlete who's going to play all over the field, and it's like
Yeah.
I don't know how good that's going to be. And they don't have Kelnick, who, if there's one thing you count on from Kelnick, he was just a really rangy corner outfielder. And getting
Yeah.
rid of that, even if you don't have to watch him struggle at the plate anymore, it's a gamble. But I do think they have avenues to. They filled out the roster finally, which just makes
Hmm.
like having those two bats, Haniger and Rayleigh, even if those aren't the players that are gonna pop necessarily. And there are probably more exciting options. Just not having like Marlowe and Canzone in the corners is
Yeah.
just like so. Now Canzone could be quite good, and I think he'll still have
Hmm.
a good chance to factor in. But just basically having that sort of depth in there now is just like kind of a sigh of relief because it's like, oh, we
Yeah.
actually have like a major league roster now on that side. And I don't know. I think the pitchers could potentially be really good. And I think we knew coming into last year that George and Logan were going to outperform the sort of mid two war projections that they had, and both of them were really solid contributors all year long. And I think you could see that with Bryce and Wu as well. Like they're
Yeah.
both kind of projected for 1 to 2 WAR range, and those guys could, be above average major league starters in their first full years, and that is the potential of that rotation is just insane.
Yeah.
And like not having like many nights off, and then getting like a guy like Discofani who's like,
He was good a few years
he's
ago.
yeah, he's had a few good years. He does some things well. He needs to listening to something about him. He needs to rediscover the extension that he had, which was so good in 2021 when he was elite. But if he can figure stuff out, and they still have sort of the DNA of being able to make these pitchers, overperform, and gosh,
Hmm.
the approach to being like, okay, we were really bad in our plan at the plate, and now we have a guy who's in charge of just making sure our plan at the plate is good and can work with these hitters. I don't know. There are pieces there. I
Yeah.
think the biggest problem is just I wish they didn't create this shitstorm, um, and totally drive all this negativity about the team because there are pieces there, but they had to just cut payroll and complain about being poor and do the 54% thing and
Yeah.
tell the fans they're doing a favor. And it's just the
Yeah.
most Mariners thing in the world to take what could be a positive opportunity and situation and just totally wreck all of the goodwill. But they've
Yeah.
got a lot to prove, and I hope that the people in the organization who have contributed to the situation are the ones that are wearing the brunt of that, and that doesn't all get thrown on Julio again as he merely posts a 30-36 WAR season at 22, and oh no, I'm sorry he didn't get to 7.5 and 40-40. Like it's just like
Yeah.
what a shame. He struck out a lot and was bad in certain situations where it would have been nice if he was better. And so
Yeah.
then yeah, it's just like let's just like really
We got to
like look at the
support the
big picture.
players.
And
We got to support the players that are coming
gosh,
in. We have to support the players that we have.
I will
So,
never support a player that I don't think is helping the Mariners succeed if there's no like Colton Wong. I was never in on Colton Wong, not for a second. Like
Tommy
if
Listella.
you suck on my favorite team, I do not. I do not. I'm not in. If you show up and you and you are supposed to be good and you suck, like I have no need for you. And
Yeah.
I'm not like an absolutist of like be nice to the players, like support the players. Ty France
Hmm.
frustrated the hell out of me at
Oh,
the end of
absolutely.
last year because it's just the most like you were good and
What
you've
happened?
lost it, and you're getting thrown out there every single day
Yeah.
just to sort of flail and do stuff that I've seen you not do before, and it's just
Mhm.
killing me. But I trust in his work ethic because everyone always talks about it, and I gotta think he'll be better this year. I mean, I think he was sub one last year,
Yeah.
and I gotta think he'll be back
I think he
to
will
the
be.
sort of 3 or 4 range that he's used to, or at least have some good stretches because he just had nothing. There was no more than like a week ish
I
where
think
he
like
was really
he
good.
started out really hot. I remember that. You think he was in like the 350-ish range in his average for like through
He
April?
broke his he like hurt his wrist on a a hit by pitch, and then he like rushed back
Hmm.
in May, and he won a game against the A's single handedly with 2 home runs, like right after he'd been hit on the wrist, and it was like
Well, do you
that
know
was crazy. It was
when
like,
was
oh
the
wow, that's crazy. And
Paredes?
then he hit like 4 homers after that.
When was the Paredes collision?
Oh,
I don't remember when that was though. But I mean,
I
to
know
be
they
fair,
played the.
he was inconsistent prior to that already.
It was July or August because
Yeah.
they or June, late June or August because they played the Rays here in late June, which it was here, right? It was the one that
Yeah.
was here, so it would have been
Yeah.
late June.
Yeah.
Yeah, when he got smoked as a base runner. Yeah, I remember that. That was crazy.
Yeah, but I was gonna say maybe it was that, but I do remember him being kind of inconsistent. It was really like just April and like maybe a little bit part of
Yeah.
May when he
There was
was
a week in
lighting it up.
August, if the Kansas City week, he was good.
Yeah,
But there really just wasn't. I remember like when he hit that home run in the last week, I was in Edgar's, hit right over my head, and I was stunned because I'd been watching, and that was the game where they would have been 160. It was the game where they whipped Texas in the last series. I think it must have been 160
something like that.
because
Because 161 was
Rojas
the no,
homer and
161 was the elimination game. So 160 was the JP walk off, and
I
then
here I'll have to look it up,
because
but yeah, it
162
was
was the meaningless game.
right.
So it
I
had to have
think
been
the JP
160
walk off. I think the JP walk
or
off
no.
was 159, and then and then they crushed Texas the next day. They won like 8-1 or something. Um, but Ty hit a home run one of those 2 games over my head in when I was in Edgar's, and it was just like, oh my god, like where has this been
Yeah,
for months? But yeah, I think he's got to be better, but I don't know. It's as we sit here right now, it's tough because the feeling about the team is justifiably negative. Like they're sitting in the 120s somewhere in payroll, probably. They're so far down, and there's really not a player that it's clear that they'll be able to spend it on. So just the sort of bad taste in your mouth of we're jacking prices up, but you're getting less because we don't have the All Star game this year, and
hmm
we're cutting payroll instead of supplementing it like we should. We were never trying to sign Otani. We are complaining that because of the bad business decision we made with our regional sports network, we are out of money. It's just like I really have a hard time dismissing that and just being like, look at all like the potential here.
yeah,
I really want to focus on like Julio Rodriguez, and that's kind of where I can derive my optimism from
yeah.
because he might be the best baseball player in the American League, and I am just like all in on the potential for that, and that's where if the team around him rises to the level, then I'll be excited because if I try to you know be like chills, they traded Caballero for Luke Rayleigh. I just like
Was a good trade.
I
Yeah,
can't. It is a good trade, definitely. I just like can't talk myself into like the like look at the value acquisition that they just achieved. Like, isn't this
yeah.
amazing? And there were times, man, like 2020 when they were in the shit, and they flip the flip Austin Nola, who's maybe the worst catcher that's ever been traded for four different players. Um, and that went so predictably for the Padres. And France and Munoz and guys that are just like cornerstones got brought in for that.
Yeah.
Like that kind of thing was just like, oh my god, that was the real peak of like, gosh, we're just so good at that. And now I think if you've got to lean into the things that the Mariners do well, and I think one is just Julio Rodriguez being the best dude and the best player that we've had in so long. I think JP and Cal and the young pitchers are just awesome.
Yep.
And then I if there's one thing the team is doing well right now, it's drafting and building up their farm system. And I think it's just really positive to finally. They don't really have an elite guy. They don't have guys on the level of those Rangers guys that are coming up right now, or
Yeah. We don't have a Skeens. We
some
don't,
of the
anyone like
yeah, they
that.
don't have
But
the blue chip guys, but they just have seven or eight like really exciting guys that are on a different level from what we're used to. Now, I don't think they're like Julio JK level guys. But Harry Ford and Cole Young, and they're getting so much, but like Emerson and Montez are gonna go way up. I just saw like a hundred list now is for fantasy baseball, but that had Montez and Emerson in the 50s and 60s, and that's gonna go way up. I mean, they're gonna be top 100 guys, I think, to start the year, and like that kind of positive traction combined with what they're doing at the major league level, where they're solidly can bank on getting in the 80s for wins,
yep.
is like a good thing. The machine is moving.
We just wish there was that extra, like,
It's
that
just like
punch.
it's so well, yeah, and I wish that they didn't like step on every rake in
Yeah.
in human
Burnt
history and
literally
and
every
screw up
bridge.
the morale, because
Yeah.
there's an easy path to the fan sentiment right now being positive side of things,
Yeah.
and it's just as negative as it's ever been, and that's purely because they are doing stuff that pisses people off, and they are
Hmm.
like, it would be so easy for them to just be quiet, reinvest some of the money that they've, some of the crazy amounts of money they've made the last 3 years,
Yep.
and pop that into like raising payroll, but only like a little.
Just
Like they
imagine an
wouldn't
extra
even have.
10 or 15. How much like
Yeah.
that would do. Yeah.
Like if we're accepting that the original sin was not competing in the actual good free agent markets the last couple of years, there wasn't really that much. Like if you were not going to get Otani, if Otani was always going to sign with the Dodgers, there was not really that much that you could have done this
Hmm.
year. But even just like not whining about it, and not like, by the way, we're poor. Sorry,
Yeah.
we're gonna cut some payroll. Like just even token raise payroll. It would have been so much better. But
I agree.
we are where we are. There's a lot to like with the players on the team and the players in the minor league system, but I just really struggle with anything else at the moment,
Yeah.
because it's just so frustrating on a lot of levels.
I agree. Well, we're getting towards the hour-long mark, so I'm gonna end this with the question that I've made my always outro question for any guests here. So,
Okay.
two-parter: if you were a major league player, and would you prefer to have be a hitter, so you'd have walkout music every single time, it would play 3 times a game, or would you prefer to be a closer, doesn't play as much, but you get the production, you get the walk-in from the bullpen, usually the song plays for a whole minute longer, and then of course, what is the song that you're choosing?
Yeah. I've thought about this. I always, when I play, I stopped playing baseball in like grade school, middle school, like did not play in high school. Um, I always love the strategy of being a pitcher more than anything.
Agreed.
Um, but I think the song that I would make my walkout song is better for a hitter. Although no, it could be for a pitcher too. It the Annie Up, which is the song that starts like the same as the John Cena intro.
Okay.
But it's I think the it's one of the remixes. I don't remember which. Might be called the Robin Hood's remix, as in like play on Robin Hood. But yeah, it's just like the unmistakable uh, same sound as like the John Cena WWE entrance, and then
Oh
it's
yeah.
like a really like intense like pump up rap song. So yeah,
Nice.
that would definitely be the one. It's just got the iconic intro and it'd be great. I really like the entrance. I really like on the Mariners right now is the Andres Munoz Paypas one. I think that's
Hmm.
awesome, and I think that like the the remix of it with the beat. I don't remember which DJ it is, but it's just it's great. It's perfect. It's like the upbeat part of it, so it's not like the slow parts of the song. It's just
Yeah.
like while he's just like warming up, it's just like pounding. I love that, and I think it's great.
Closer entrances are
That's
the
one of my
best.
my favorite pump up songs that's come out in a while. But yeah,
Awesome.
um, that's the one I like the most.
Okay. Very cool.
JP's reggae iconic as well.
Yeah, I loved. I wish I was able to see Seawalds before he got traded. I wish that would have been so cool. I love.
Jump around's pretty good, man.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? I'm not even. I'm lying. My favorite one on the Mariners right now is can't believe I forgot this. Is Matt Brash Little Wayne is just
Hmm.
unbelievable. It's
Yeah.
so good because he's so skinny and white, but it's just like so
Yeah.
perfect
Wouldn't
for like
expect him to choose that. Yeah.
it's such a vibe, and I love that he chose it. But it's just like it's great. It's such a good song to walk in, and they still do the lights for him, which was a bit of a
They
failed marketing
better.
campaign.
They need to. I mean, granted, he was our best bullpen arm last year. He
Yeah,
deserves to have that production. But yeah, so we're at that hour mark. So I'm gonna close it out here. That's gonna do it for this episode of the You Love to See It podcast. Thank you, Patrick, for joining. I appreciate you
of course,
putting
man.
your
This was
thoughts out
fun. I
there.
appreciate. Thanks for
It's
having
probably
me.
nice to not have like a character count on your thoughts when it comes to how the teams are going.
Yeah, I
So
realize I'm not as good as limiting them without the character count,
no,
though.
you're good. It's nice to have that stream of consciousness. That's why I love podcasts so much. You just get to hear like how people think and why they think that way. It's really interesting. But once again, this pod is available on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, and Amazon Music. So when you see this, it'll be out on those streaming platforms as well. You can hit the 5-star review and follow the pod. That would be great. And if you're on YouTube, like, subscribe, comment a guest that you may want me to try to get on, which don't say Julio because I don't have the balls for that. But maybe eventually. So yeah, that's going to be it. I appreciate you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. See ya.